Peace, family. Welcome to the Righteous Frequency Podcast, where spirit meets sanctuary and where we embrace unity consciousness and strive to revive ancient wisdom in today's world. Our mission is to provide individuals with tools, knowledge, and guidance needed to unify your community of self and give agency to your higher consciousness through ancient healing sciences and technology. So come along with us and walk so we can walk this path together.
All right. Yes. Welcome to another enlightening episode of the Righteous Frequency Podcast. I am your co-host, Paqo Soul Knowledge. And just grateful to be here. As we do dive into today's topics and subjects, let's take a moment to give thanks to the Creator and remember the wisdom of Rumi. The wound is the place where the light enters you, and this reminds us that our challenges often lead to profound growth. So, thank you all for joining us today.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. We have some wonderful things to present today. Today is going to be an excellent show. But before we get into our show, we're going to do a little bit. We're going to go through our song first, or our sleeper hit, before we introduce our guest.
Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to give some acknowledgement to the ancestors.
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Let's take a moment to honor our ancestors, those whose prayers, sacrifices, and wisdom paved the way for us to be here today. I'm speaking with you now.
Yes, absolutely. So we speak their names and we do bring their spirits, into the space with love, reverence, and gratitude. We do honor the ancestors, past, present, and future, and we just give honor and veneration. So, yes, indeed.
So may this conversation be worthy of your legacy. Ashe, Aho, Amen.
Yes, indeed. We're having a little bit of some technical difficulties. Give me 1 second, everybody.
No worries.
1 second. All righty. Testing, testing. All right. So thank everybody for their patience. Having a little bit of had a slight technical difficulty, but I think we should be all good.
We got it figured out.
All right.
All right. So let's get into it. I'm so excited. Tonight, we are honored to welcome our brother, a teacher, and one of our deeply respected guides on this path, Andres Villa. His
Yes,
work,
yes.
his work through Pachamama Sacred Path has touched hearts across the world. He's helped countless souls reconnect with earth based wisdom, sacred ceremony, and the Andean lineage of healing.
Yes, yes, yes. Andres he walks with the mountains, speaks with ancestors, and he just teaches from a place of deep heart and humble power. So we're truly blessed to have him join us for this sacred conversation. Let's welcome our dear friend, maestro, teacher, soul family, Andres Villa. So thank you.
Hey guys, how are you? Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes,
Appreciate
indeed.
it.
Yes.
It's an honor to have you here.
Yeah. Um,
So
Um,
first and foremost, Andres, is once again just such an honor to have a moment to sit with you today. As a dear brother, teacher, and guide, I do have a question for you. When it comes to the shamanic path and the path of Andean shamanism, can you walk with us the journey of what led you to first begin on this path?
yeah,
sorry.
like let me vibe to it first, and then I'll. Yes. So it's been like you guys know, it's been a total journey for me. It started in 2013. Obviously, the spiritual path is something that begins within us the moment we're born, and we've been living the spiritual path for lifetimes now. But for me, actively, consciously awakened, it started on 2013 when my son Andres Gabriel was born, and he made me understand that I wasn't ready as a human to take care of another human being. So when I saw him come out of my ex-partner's womb when he was being born, I was able to see purity for the first time. I was able to see, something beyond. And obviously, you're seeing yourself and like all of the things that people say, but it was something beyond special. It was something, for me, it was something divine. And I recognized the beauty. I recognized that purity, and at the same time, I recognized that I did not have the preparation to hold space for that. I was not equipped emotionally, mentally, financially. It was okay back then, but it was not a. I just saw that I was going to create so much damage, for him. And this is obviously something that a lot of parents feel, right? A lot of parents feel like there's going to be some a little bit of trauma that we're going to pass down to our children. But for me, it was incredibly fearful to see that all of those unreconciled demons, excuse me, from the childhood, and you name it. I was a very angry guy back then, and in that fear, in that moment, basically what happened, it was that fear was the precursor. That fear that I felt, that I was not equipped, that I was gonna potentially harm him, was balanced with this love, I didn't want to continue repeating what I've gotten from my mom, abandonment, rejection from my dad, and abuse of many different kinds. And so I looked up to the heavens, crying. And then my mom and my dad, who met for the first time since they divorced back in when I was like 11 years old or so, they came back and they see me crying, and then they hold me. It's like, what's going on? And it's like, I'm gonna fuck this up. I'm gonna mess all of this up. And they recognize that because they were 17 and 18 when they had me, so they made a lot of mistakes with me and my sisters, right? And so they recognized it and they cried with me, and they held space for me. And in that, I don't know what they were thinking. They were just saying like, it's okay, we're gonna figure it out, we're gonna be okay, we got your back here, and so on and so forth. But really, I knew that they didn't have it reconciled anyway, so how can they advise me for something like this? So I was really not paying attention to what they were saying. In that fearful crying moment, I looked up, for the first time in maybe 20 years or so, and I said, I need help. I need assistance. I need help. Very shortly after, a couple of weeks after, I had a conversation with a cousin of mine, my cousin Fernando, and he passed a text, very very special text, which I still read, from time to time over the years. I've read it many many times, and this was the beginning of me understanding a new way of being. This text, I've shared it with you guys. It's called the Nine Letters of Christ, and that was the beginning. It's an anonymous text. Nobody's profiting in a sense of like, oh, I am an author and I am collecting this, right? But it was a very transcendental text that the moment that I started reading and listening, because I remember I was listening in YouTube in my phone. I was in Sunnyvale, California, living at the time, and I'm reading and listening at the same time, reading on the computer and listening, and then something started happening where I stopped getting hungry. I feel hungry, and this went on for about 30 days as I'm reading and rereading and reading and rereading, and I'm getting into this space where I am not eating. It was unintentional, and the material that I was reading, it was like opening up perspectives and getting me higher and higher and higher. I was not deep into sacred medicines yet. I didn't understand what sacred medicines. I wasn't aware of it. I never heard of the word ayahuasca before or anything like this. But that was the beginning, and at the end of the 30 days where I was fasting, I went from like 195 pounds, close to 200 pounds, to 158, 157, something like this, and and I was in a completely different, realm of existence before and after. And so that was an awakening. I had a lot of conversations with different deities, different beings, and it was like the whole screen was cleansed. I was also going through a very cathartic through those 30 days. I was going through a very cathartic process of, removing very dark, heavy entities and energies within myself, depressions, angers, wraths, resentments. And I was able to forgive a lot of what was, the childhood, and you name it, also I made amends, on those 30 days. I understood how I was being held down by my own subconscious patterns and mindsets. And so throughout the 30 days and even afterwards, I started just like, I grabbed my phone and I called everybody that I could remember that I had wronged, to say that I was sorry, that I didn't know, and just to, explain how my ego had gotten the best of me. Not necessarily excusing myself behind my ego, but just saying, like, I am so sorry I felt jealous. I am so sorry I felt, manipulated. I felt like this, and therefore my reactions were this and that. And so it was a very intense, very cathartic process. I had taken a whole year off when my son was born to take care of him, take care of the household, of my partner back then. And so I'm just doing nothing, right? I don't have to focus on work or anything like this. And so I go for the next maybe like 3 to 4 months. I'm still in this like natural high where I'm able to see like the wind pass outside of my window, but it was not just the wind like agitating the leaves. It was the wind in energy. I would see like waves of energy that were very dynamic, twisting, and and crossing outside. It was like my third eye was like fully open. And so multiple conversations with, um, again, Joshua, Isis, different deities and ascended masters, and that was the beginning. However, I was, green as you could be. I had like no understanding of the depth of what I was going through, but I was all for it. I'm like, let's go. And so I was very naive. I didn't understand how deep the roots go, into the subconscious. And so, 3 to 4 months pass, and I founded this janitorial service company in all of the Bay Area. And so I had, 10 ladies working with me. We were cleaning homes and buildings and, after construction type of cleanup. And I was doing pretty good. I had, a couple of vans and things like this. And so it was great. It was good work. And then I remember one time I was late with two of the cleaning ladies. It was my fault. I was like about 10 minutes late to a jewelry in Palo Alto that we would clean every morning. And when I
Oh
got
wow.
there, I'm so afraid of like, so I had to save face. And then I said like, oh, you know what? And I made this bullshit story to the owner. And I'm so sorry. And the owner's like, I don't care. Just clean up. We have like another 40 minutes before we open up. We need to be clean by then. But, he didn't really care about the excuse or why. But still, I was like, so, there was like a lot of different things on the subconscious under the hood that I was not really uh, even aware of where they would stem. Like a fear of like this little part of the ego that said like, no, 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 you have to save face, right? You have to do whatever. And so I made this bullshit story about the car not starting, or I can't remember what it was, but basically in that moment when I was untruthful, like I felt this like depression of the energy system, just like like my heart just like felt like this deep pain, and then I felt like disconnected from that voice that was consistently informing me to make a left right here, or like say this in this moment. That for those like 3 to 4 months that I was inside of this awakening experience, it was sublime. It was divinity. It was like flying high in the Hanak Pacha in the heavens, right, fifth dimension. And then the moment that I said that lie, it just like it felt like oof, like I got disconnected. And I'm like, no, I'm so sorry. I remember I was crying in my car. I left the ladies working inside, and I'm like praying. I'm like, please don't. It's like I apologize. Please don't leave me. Don't leave me. It was painful. To see how we shoot ourselves in the foot when it's the spiritual path. And then little by little I was messing up. My old subconscious things. There's no skipping. There's no cutting corners in this path. There's no skipping ahead lessons or anything like that, right? After I experienced these 4 months of consistent bliss and exuberation into joy, and it was completely otherworldly. Then the ego starts to rationalize, and it starts to take it for granted, and so then it starts to grow on top of the connection, and it starts to show you again what you still carry subconsciously, your genetics, your ancestry. You guys invoke the ancestry. All of that ancestry was still in my blood, was still in my patterns and the subconscious parts that I had not. This is the Ukupacha within us, the underworld within us. I had touched upon the Hanak Pacha, I had touched upon the heavens, and it was beautiful and blissful. But then there was a part within, which we all have, that I didn't really know how to address that well, and that you can only see a portion of that. And so then I start to feel over the next months how I was like just like again shooting myself in the foot, reactions here again, and it passed maybe like another 4 to 5 months after that light, that initial light, where I was back at square one, almost like feeling like that guy that was crying outside of the delivery room, like thinking that he was gonna fuck, like everything. It felt like everything was for nothing, and I'm like, what the freaking hell just happened? It's like, I who am I now? And this is 2013, maybe like around November, December. My son was born in March. And so, then I am, I'm like, let's see what we can do now. And so I start going into, with a few friends that I know. And um, my best friend Ryan at the time, I go with him, and I knew that he was very smart guy, very intelligent, but he never spoke about spirituality. He's like a spiritual ninja. The guy's like a guru, in my heart. He's truly that. But then, like at the same time, he never he never speaks about it. He's not, like going into podcasts speaking about consciousness and like none of that. No, 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 no. The guy still used to sell cars. Now he's working at like a plumbing industry, and he does, he's got a family and the whole thing. And you would never think that he knows any of this, right? But he lived with a guru, and he's very well aware of different things. So then I get to him, and I'm telling him, it's like two impulses. There's the divine, and then there's the ego, and and the guy's just like looking. He's like in his desk and Subaru, Capital Subaru in San Jose, and then he's like looking at me from the other side of the desk. He's like, good for you, good for you. Later on, I recognized that he was actually in many points throughout our friendship before my awakening. Like I would remember him like soul gazing, into my eyes, and like he was like playing flamenco, and as he's playing flamenco, he's like letting spirit flow, and then he's just like flowing all of the consciousness into my eyes. And I remember like later on, I recognize in retrospect how many times he blessed with seeds of awakening. It's like, which is what we do nowadays with the people. It's just like look at it, it's like there's the divine inside of you. Like remember, even if we don't say it. But then then I started. He introduced me to breath work, to Kriya Yoga. And there's multiple kinds of breath work, right? There's the Yogananda way, there's the Sri Sri Ravi Shankar way, there's a lot of different kinds. And so I learned with Art of Living the principles, and I went through courses and seminars and workshops and, trainings and all sorts of things, right? I got into silence courses and you name it. And so I did that for a long time, but immediately after, one of the conversations that he and I were having is like ayahuasca. He mentioned that. And then another friend, within days or so, he also said ayahuasca. So I took it as a signal, and I researched online, and I found this lady that was serving ayahuasca at a at a basement of a huge building in San Jose, California, downtown San Jose. Picture like you're at Market and First or something like this, big building, and then you go on the alley, and then you go into the basement, and then you get there, and it's like there's like no windows, and and it's like an ominous kind of like sense of feeling, kind of dark, and it's like maybe like about 20 of us, all Latinos. And so I'm like, all right, let's go, and so I sit down, and I'm like, I know where I'm supposed to go anyways, it's like I just need to work all of this stuff that is pulling me back, from it. And I had seen already what heaven was, and so I'm like, all right, let's go. So then I had that first initial experience with Mother Ayahuasca, and then from there is all history. It was very shortly after that I had my second, maybe within a month or so, and then the third one I had it with my teacher Shava, who I still hold very dear in my heart. And he I had a ceremony with him in a park. Now it was more natural, how it's meant to be, not in a dungeon. And so then I went to have this ceremony with him in Oakland at a park, and I recognized the teacher in him. I recognized purity, I recognized beauty, and then from there he gave me like maybe like 3 or 4 doses. And my fourth ayahuasca, I had it on my own. And then from there is like just like a domino effect. Shortly after, I was brewing for myself. I was not interested in serving anybody. I was interested in going within, because I knew that this was something that had to do with me. I had no desires to be a shaman or anything like that, but I wanted to understand everything that I could understand about it in the first person. So like 3 to 5 to up to 7 days sometimes straight, drinking ayahuasca every day, for 7 days straight. And then learning how to brew it from different maestros, different taitas that I would connect to, sometimes in person, sometimes online. And they would teach me from Peru and from Colombia. And so again, sometimes in person. And they would tell me, so you need to add a little bit of vinegar here. You're too acidic or too alkaline. You need to do this, you need to do that, when I was starting to brew. But yeah, that's a little bit of the beginning of my path. Is started with awakening, and then getting a glimpse of the potential of human capacity.
Hmm.
What we're meant to do in those first 4 months when I was sharing that I had that awakening. I was used by spirit in a few different accounts. In I was able to be a transitioning bridge when I was present in the gym when someone died, and then I was able to, pray and be used, like really, really, almost like the word manipulated sounds about right, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was just like almost like I was kicked to the background, and then something else came and possessed to do some things with energy, with my family, with finances, with manifesting abundance of food and things like this when there was nothing sometimes. And it was pretty incredible, like the things that I was able to see very early on the path. And um, and then from there on, everything that I've been doing with Pachamama, with sacred ceremonies, with the Yatixi, with the retreats and courses and pilgrimages and initiations in Peru, all of that is reconciling the basement to have a solid foundation to, you know, harmoniously work our way back to that state of grace, to that state of bliss. You
Hmm.
know,
Wow,
yeah.
that's powerful.
Well,
Wow.
I summarized 12 years right here.
That's so powerful. So many things came to mind when you were talking. It was like, okay, um, so you started having an awakening experience prior to your experiences with plant medicine. Am I understanding that correctly?
Is correct. That is correct. I did have uh, quite a bit of a spiritual experience before plant medicine. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so my question would be how at when you started with the plant medicine, how did it further amplify what you were already going through?
Yeah. 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 Plant medicine is amazing for getting you in contact and connection with the shadow. You
Hmm.
know. Now, there's medicines. There's plant medicines that are masculine, that connect you with an expansiveness, that connects you with a convergence, like the integration of different fields, morphogenetic fields, and different states of consciousness that you have access before and that have not been integrated. Masculine medicines are great for integrating that. And there's other medicines like Mother Ayahuasca that actually opens up the space. There's divergence and then there's convergence. And so, without getting too technical, there's some medicines that align you with, light, with your own light, like
Hmm.
Bufo, for example. And then there's some medicines that align you with your darkness, with your shadow, like Mother Ayahuasca, Yahe, and other kind of medicines that are meant to bring you into the lower parts of yourself and into what we know as the hero's journey. And you go deep down to understand, who are you, right? Who are you in the past also, right? Who are you as the inner child that might be wounded still, but also who have you been in previous lifetimes? Now, also, what parts of yourself you're not aware that you carry from your mom, your dad, grandparents, ancestry, right? Which is genetics. And so all of that is the unknown. All of that is uh, your conscious mind sometimes does not have the capacity to break away, cross the threshold of the ego's comfort zones
Hmm.
to be able and explore. beyond what you think you know.
Mm.
And so plant medicine has that capacity to bring you really deep into yourself, to see what kinds of conflicts we still harbor or carry in our mind, in our heart, that we might be very complacent with. Nowadays you see a justified in social media in the world, an eye for an eye. It's like, oh, they're attacking me. They dropped bombs and drones in Russia, and it's
Mm.
like, well, we can expect that Russia's gonna go and kill those guys back, right? Like they're And so it's like, oh, you can expect it. So it's very justified, right? It's always been.
Mm.
This is ego nature. And so all of the acceptance upon eye for an eye type of thinking, and you know the porn industry just grows and grows and grows and grows.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different things within the paradigms, and outside of the paradigms in society and culture, aside of economy, religion, science, and politics. Culturally speaking, we have transformed and evolved to be this, look at me, look at how much I have, look at how masculine it is. Like ego is like very, very deeply accentuated, and there's little introspection nowadays.
Mm.
Even less than 10, 15 years ago, when I started, it wasn't so, abrasive that people were feeling proud for some of the negative patterns. So how conscious can you be, right, when what you're attaching to and being proud about are negative things,
Hmm.
and like negative speech, and people engage in things like this. So this is why the medicines, once you go, and people are very afraid of going into an ayahuasca, because they know that some of that harshness, some of that apprehensiveness, some of those depressions, some of those traumas, that's where they're kept. And
Mhm.
so different medicines go, when you go into an experience, into a ceremony, whether it is a one night or is a like a 3 day or a 7 day retreat with us, one of the things that you experience is crossing those thresholds of the ego, those comfort zones, so that you can go on and really truly get a taste of what you have when you don't have those protection mechanisms. Right?
Hmm.
So when the ego is dissolved, then you're gonna face those traumas, those negative patterns, right? Those behaviors, et cetera, that you carry, that you have, and that you are complacent about, that
Hmm.
it in complicit also, right? And you're okay with like some of the negativity. You're okay with some of the reactions, in traffic, and when someone neglects you or doesn't consider you, and all of this, like, he's a he's a freaking prick, and like all of this, immediate reactions of projection, going outside. And so the medicines have truly done a number for the ego, right? In just in general, what it does, the medicine, it helps you go and rewire the responses that you have by you becoming aware of a deeper sense of humility within you. And the
Hmm.
humility goes when you go toe to toe with these negative things, when you say, like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that I was, creating all of this trail of destruction behind me. I wasn't aware. Because usually we like to blame others, right? And like, no, that's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault, and so on and so forth. So, what the medicines do, and it's fair to say that when people, they're afraid of going into medicine, it's because it's a right intuition, right? That they're gonna have to face all of those negative aspects within themselves that have created divorces, bankruptcies. I mean, I've gone through many of those myself, and I know that all of it has been created by me. I cannot blame anyone, you know? And so this is what medicine teaches you. Medicine teaches you to start to, is the beginning of taking responsibility for ourselves. However, nowadays, medicine has been trivialized, taken for granted, and
Yes.
it is important to make a huge thing wherever you go. Whenever you hear someone say like medicine, great, medicine is good, but not without spirituality.
Mm.
Medicine is not a something to explore without proper preparation, without lineage, without the proper context. Because now you can buy ayahuasca online. I don't know if they still sell it on eBay. They used to,
Oh
on
wow.
Etsy, and anybody can get their hands because it's a business now.
Mm.
So the distinction here with me personally is you don't do that. You don't go into ayahuasca just like that. Now, it's not so much that you shouldn't or that you can't. You can do whatever you want, right? But it is not harmonious in the long term, especially when you don't have. If you feel the call, anybody hearing this, if you feel the call to go into sacred medicines, it doesn't matter which medicine it is. It could be peyote, it could be wachuma, it could be bufo, it could be iboga. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're looking for, it you need to go into a lineage that understands the different levels that medicine takes you and the purpose of the medicine itself as a spirit. Each of the medicines, they have their own spirit and they have a specific purpose. What is the purpose of mother ayahuasca? It's something that it is very, very specific. When we don't have that understanding and all of the basis of the implications of this purpose for you, you know so that we can keep a good relationship with the medicine, we require a structure that supports this new relationship with the medicine itself. So it is um, something that of big interest to a lot of people. Medicine here,
Hmm.
medicine there. People are you know mixing medicine with like ayahuasca with San Pedro nowadays at the same ceremony. There's mixing ketamine with mushrooms and acid with mushrooms and like all sorts of like combinations. Here the question is why and what for,
Mm.
and where is the medicine in all of this? Where is the spirit of the medicine in all of this? So there's some people that do channel like ayahuasca manifestos, and this is beautiful. It's like understanding the attempt to connect to the essence of each of the medicines. I believe that this is the way forward. In my particular case, this is the way
Mm.
forward.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So
Not to get too boring.
So many things. So many
man, yeah,
things.
yeah, no worries.
So
So
many
okay,
things.
two questions.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the comments in the chat asks, if you were stranded on an island, I guess with only one plant medicine, which one would you choose and why? And then I have a follow up question after that as
Mhm.
well. So, but yeah.
Me, everybody has a different relationship with their ego. Everybody has a different relationship with their spiritual path. For me, Mother Ayahuasca, 3 to 5 cups in, if I'm like on a heroic journey, I can be completely lost in the fourth dimension and still know that I am. And I always, always, always feel Mother Ayahuasca behind. There's like a presence.
Mm.
Mm,
And so it is a very easy type of experience for me. Mother Ayahuasca was my first medicine. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I had Niño Santos when I was like 17 years old. Never ceremoniously, but definitely introspective. I was not partying. I was reflecting, and I also had Santa Maria since I was like 15, 16 years old. And so, however, Mother Ayahuasca has always, from the get go, has always been the spirit that I mean, just to put it into perspective, she invited me in. She presented herself to me and says, "When are you going to start the work that you're here to do?" And I'm like, "Whoa!" I was like, "Whereas like I've only been doing it for like 7 times, like I think like I need some preparation." And then I started my job, my work, my apprenticeship, and everything, and obviously it was like years of this, right? It's a long incubation period. With Bufo, for example, Bufo, I could smoke bufo right now and continue the conversation and have like a very, very big dose of
Ooh.
bufo
oh
and
wow.
continue a conversation with you. I've died a few times, and I've been very, very close. I've experienced what it is to completely dissolve and merge back in the surrender of like I give myself. And I'm not talking like, oh, okay, so this is something that everybody has and just goes into, the fourth dimension, and then you have to incarnate again because your body died and you're
Hmm.
one, you're like a soul, you're back in the soul again, and then you have to reincarnate again or choose what you're going to do next. I'm talking about the dissolution of Andres, the disappearing of Andres as one and to coming into something else where I don't exist anymore as how you have known me, like you guys have known me. And I've tasted that many times where I've been working myself all the way to the brink of fifth dimension, if you want to call it that. And what the ego experiences is the death of the ego, where there's no more identity, there's no more individuality. And this is the biggest fear of the ego. I've been there, multiple times. And every time that I come back from that, it is a new, completely new paradigm of existence. My relationships shift and, magical things happen. But so this is not what makes it the best one, or those are just the ways that you relate, that I personally relate to ayahuasca, that I personally relate to San Pedro or to Bufo. But the right medicine for you, if I would have to choose one only, I would probably pick Nino Santos.
Mm,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
yeah,
surprising.
it is, because that's the one that actually makes me sweat. That's the
Really?
one. That's the one that can get me to my knees still. That's
Huh.
5-7 grams in. There's this a lot of work that can happen. With
that's
Hmm.
that's true. That's true.
I'm far from being a hippie. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of work still at those levels, like heroic levels, that I recognize that is sacred work for me. As to with
Mhm.
ayahuasca, if I take a heroic dose, I welcome it and I can flow through it, no problem, no issues. Doesn't give me any challenge, any of these medicines, because I've surrendered myself so deeply to them that I've understood the path forward in each of them. With San Pedro is just the same, taking 75 to 100 grams of San Pedro, like 4 cups, like thick molasses that you're drinking in all reverence, of course. It's been a lot of growth that happens. I have a good relationship with those masculine ones, but Nino Santos is a different thing. It's a very special, very special. I
Man.
I recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah, we truly appreciate Nino Santos. Like, I think that's really one of the key elements that kind of brought us onto the path. Like, hey, we can do this. Like, this is not only just like really profound and transformational for us, but it's also something that has really just helped us develop and understand the how can I say, the veil between different dimensions and realities and timelines, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Um, but with that being stated, and talking about like realities and timelines and just overall the message of spirit, can you go into the spirits of the variations of medicines? When it comes to things like Nino Santos, San Pedro, and things like that.
Are you speaking about the spirit of the medicine itself, or
Yes.
what, or the spirits that you find when you're in different states, different
Ooh.
species?
That's a better question. The spirits that you find when you're in various states.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Right. Like there's when you take a look at it from the science perspective, from the science observation point of observation of science, there's different parts of the brain that are getting activated. There's you know with endocannabinoids when you're having Santa Maria. If you have a brownie, right, with enough THC, you know that you can go into a journey. I myself have gone into journeys for 18 hours, sometimes beyond 24 hours, where I have to be with my rattle because it's such a profound, space. The same thing with Mother Ayahuasca, with Bufo. With Bufo, I gotta say that I have not encountered um, entities. I encounter deities or very harmonious beings,
Mm.
right? They're not gods or demigods or things like this. I find sometimes, very few times, I've encountered um, kausai, some form of existence in a conscious form. Like a dragon. Sometimes my power animal came to me one time in Bufo, but also uh, I had a David Hofmeister, who's a very very coherent teacher that I consider a friend. He came, he's a teacher of A Course in Miracles, and the guy's usually in the Hanak Pacha, usually in the heavens,
Mm.
or very harmonious fourth dimension. Yeah, obviously he's here and now, and observing everything that happens, but he's plugged into that, right? So with Bufo, because you're raising your vibration so much, what you're able to see is that type of thing, right? That type of energies that are highly elated as well,
Mm.
elevated. With Mother Ayahuasca is a little bit different. With Yahe is also a little bit different. With Mother Ayahuasca, because it's a vine, a twisty vine, right? When you have NNDMT with chacruna, and it's the traditional ayahuasca blend, you go deep within your roots, and there you can find some manifestations of ancestral consciousness, and you can see different kinds of guttural animals, for example. I've seen some demons here and there. Not very often. In these past 12 years, I've seen two, two different, very old, very very old age type of demons, where like they're throwing up and they're like rah, like splashing their vomit in their faces, and
Oh
and
wow.
trying to masturbate women and men at the same time. It's like it's just like really really twisty type of consciousness, and twisty, for lack of a better word. It's I have deep respect for those entities as well. They're all teachers, right? And so and from there, which that's kind of like the most chaotic, most conflicted type of consciousness that you can find. You find also angels. I've been able to speak inside of ayahuasca with Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael a few times, with Jeshua multiple times, and receive gifts, symbolic gifts from each of them. So it's not just the ukupacha that you can connect in there, because once you think about it like this, you go in, and then like all of a sudden you find this entity or being that it is oppressing you, whether it is a person or this you know anthropomorphic type of being, like a praying mantis. I've had those, or some sorts of parasites, sometimes energetic parasites you can find. Whenever you're able to come to terms with that, and you end up purging it, you transcend it, you integrate it, whatever it is that you do, and you fully overcome it, there's this quantum leap of consciousness that you experience, and it's a burst of energy that puts you in a different state, where you're able to access, you raise your consciousness, um, by leaving some hucha behind, or transcending some negative energy within you. You're able to elevate inside of the altered state of consciousness inside of ayahuasca. You're able to cross a higher level, where you're able to now communicate with much higher beings, kind of like the reward of all of the struggle that you went through, right?
Mm.
And these are accesses. This is basically just access that is momentaneous, it's temporal, um, when it's so acute, when it's so direct, when it's a temporal, giving you an understanding of how much access you have now, and it is for you to integrate, for you to be able to understand how is it that once the ayahuasca is done, how can you still focus on that instead of focusing on what you just transcended. And this is a way of breaking patterns, right? It's like, let me not focus on those type of emotions, those type of feelings anymore. They're not serving me. Why am I so addicted to them? You start the work so that you can start to focus on what truly feels expansive, what truly feels coherent with yourself. And so ayahuasca is one thing like that. Also with Nino Santos, there's all sorts of things that can happen. I've seen, it really does depend on the person. So when the medicine kicks in, what you got to understand and keep in mind always is that what you're entering is a space, an aspect of your subconscious mind. If you have fear in your subconscious mind, that fear is going to take a shape and a form, and it's going to show itself in a shape and a form to you in visions and things like this. All of the medicines have the potential to do this. So, what type of beings you can encounter, it depends on your subconscious, right?
Hmm.
It depends and on a lot of different things, also, right? Does that make sense, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That and that's super telling. Super telling.
Hmm.
When it comes to the medicines themselves, though, each of the medicines have their own guardian being, kind of like the
Yeah.
Apus, like the
Okay.
mountains. There's Apu Popocatépetl, and the guardian of Apu Popocatépetl is Don Goyo. They call it Don Goyo. When he manifests um, and he takes shape and form of a person, people see this old man that gets lost in the woods, right? But when he comes and interacts with people, it is like a blissful experience. It's transcendental, beyond time and space type of experiences. Some of the big apus, especially Texe apus, which are apus that have a role in the evolution of consciousness of Pachamama, of Mother Earth, and the evolution of consciousness of humanity. These
Hmm.
are the big apus. There's other smaller ayu apus. There's a suyu apus, and those play more of a role of helping communities, right? They're maybe not so important to the flow of ley lines and things like that within Mother Earth. So there's beings, the way that mountains have caretakers, also medicines have caretakers. Mother ayahuasca, she a lot of people see a snake, right? A lot of people see a snake with peyote. People see deer, different animals consciousness, and the deer speaks, right? And the snake, the big Sachamama anaconda, comes and speaks to you, and if she eats you, it's a blessing. And so there's each of the medicines have a representative spirit that takes shape according to the culture. Different cultures see different things, of course.
Wow.
It's powerful as usual.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Um, so many things
This is
came to
this is this
mind.
is this is
Like,
all module two, by the way.
I
I
figured as much. I figured as much because I'm like, hold on
This is
now.
all module
Some of
know.
this
two.
is familiar.
This is
Yeah,
all
and I'm
module.
feeling, I'm
Yeah,
feeling like I'm back. Like, oh, okay, this
Yeah,
is.
we
yeah,
definitely back.
yeah,
I see,
yeah,
I see how that's happening. I see how you put that together.
yeah.
One of the things coming to mind for me is the evolution of consciousness and radical responsibility. Um, and in working with you, that's one of the things that was a really big lesson for me. Um, Understanding how to escape victimhood um, by being empowered to take radical responsibility for things that was happening or things that occurred um, in my past, and how that process could be evolutionary. Um,
Yes.
one of the things that I've seen with um, one of the things that I've seen with ayahuasca is that Mother Ayahuasca does require you to take radical responsibility. Um,
Yes.
can you elaborate more on the evolution of consciousness through those various means?
Right, right. The way that Mother Ayahuasca helps us take responsibility is by awareness. We have consciousness and we have awareness. Consciousness is you understanding a concept, right? You become conceptually uh, intelligent about a specific thing. That right there is you're conscious that something is happening. You can observe it, and that's it. Awareness, on the other hand, it is more of a feeling. So you have thinking and feeling. You have left hemisphere and right hemisphere, right? Thinking and feeling. The thinking is consciousness, the feeling is awareness. When you transcend into the fourth dimension is all the way that you navigate is through feeling, through resonance. You know, you start to approach a situation, and it is through feeling now. Right now, it's not so much through conceptualizing and sizing up by what you see. Obviously, always that should be balanced. It should be harmonious as well. But in taking responsibility, it is once you become aware, once you can feel who you are and what is taking place, this is how you take responsibility. For example, taking responsibility. Let's make it a little bit more tasty.
Okay.
So, Alicia, what's one of the wounds that you have worked on the deepest?
Oh, um, I would say that wound would be that I am not good enough.
Okay. All right. So this is something that you have become conscious about because maybe you sometimes hear yourself say it. First, it started like, hey, why are you selling yourself short? Maybe someone said it to you, and then you see maybe that there might be a pattern of you saying or thinking that I am not enough. That immediately starts to create a feeling, right? The feeling, though, we believe the feeling,
Mm.
right? Because you basically attached to the thought that I am not good enough, so you take it for good. You take it as the best thing that you could be thinking in that moment, and then that right there activates a wound that maybe
Mm.
mom or dad said that you were an idiot, or sometimes it can be really harsh, right? So
Mhm.
however you receive that and you believe that energetically the thought is being coherent with what you're thinking. However, you're not, a lot of the times we're not conscious, like humanity is not conscious of any of those two. They're not conscious that they're thinking that they're not enough, and they much less, they don't have any awareness of what they're feeling, meaning they don't, they're not conscious at a feeling level, right? It's like this is what it is, and this is the truth of my reality. This is the truth of my existence. And so Mother Ayahuasca says, okay, we're gonna go beyond, because the ego says they let's take a step back. What happens is the ego is like, well, don't worry about it. You're doing the best that you can, and you pat yourself in the back, and it's like, okay, we're gonna learn how to do it better these next time, right? Don't worry so much about that because you can't do anything about it. That's what the ego says, right?
Mhm.
And then you move forward, and you're like half smiles, like instead of like radiating, you're kind of like coherent with that feeling and with that thought in the way that you present and portray to the world, the
Mhm.
way that you shine your energy to the cosmos, which is listening at all times. And so then here what happens is you go into ayahuasca, and ayahuasca says like, take that justification bullshit away, Alicia.
Mhm.
Don't listen to like it's okay, like no. You're gonna go and feel really deeply all of those wounds that make you feel and think that you're not enough. And so it
Hmm.
takes you to the root. It might be that it's past life. It might be that it's something, a very key point experience with your mom, right? And so then you go and now you become aware of this energy. Once you become aware, you can then recognize it as something that it is not you. It is something that you received and you kept it, yes, but it is not you. It's something that is like this right here, right? This is not me, it's mine, right? And you start to see emotions as something like extensions, like little devices, like little things that you carry that fulfill a function and a purpose. You know, it doesn't matter what it is, what type of energy, consciousness, trauma you have been given, and all of
Mhm.
that, you always have the option to say like, okay, this is an extension, and yes, maybe I am very identified to this. And Mother Ayahuasca comes and says like feel it, feel
Mhm.
the vibration of that. How does that
Mhm.
feel? And then, like, it brings you so deep, you don't have a way to protect yourself anymore. The ego's not there, and then you start to go really deep in until like you start to purge in the energy, and there's a catharsis. and you
Mm.
see it as something that it was never yours. You realize finally that it was never you, it was never yours to take in. You didn't know what to do with it, so you took it in. You
Mhm.
adopted it as part of your identity, as part of your personality, your persona. And so now Mother Ayahuasca is telling you, no, like, look, you threw it up. You're able to, let go and disassociate from it if you want, right? And so then what starts to happen is you start to understand that these things are not you, and
Mm.
start to, now you separate it, and now you can start to take responsibility for it, with it, responsibility of it, I'm sorry. Now you see it as something that it is not you, because sometimes it's like, well, I am depressed. You're saying I am no kankani depression. And so
Mm.
instead of saying I am depressed, or I am this worthlessness, or I am this anger, or I am this whatever, then now you see it as something that it is happening, something that it is just, you know you're experiencing it, right?
Mm.
And then you start to see, okay, where, why. And Mother Ayahuasca starts to awaken your capacity to be able to see, where does it come from, what is the name of it. A lot of the times it's entities. What is the name of it?
Mm.
um, all sorts of things. And once you start to awaken about it,
Mhm.
you become awoken, and you can see it now, then you can do something about it. Before, not. All of the
Mhm.
people that are like blaming, and it's like, no, here, like in anger, like indignation, all of that, they don't have that option. There's
Mhm.
people that have not gotten into the awakening yet, to say, like, I have an option to understand this energy as something other than myself. Yes, I am very affected, but what part of me is affected? The
Mhm.
ego. Okay, am I only the ego? No, there's many different parts of myself, different chakras, different, there's spirit, there's the higher self, there's all sorts of things, right? There's the soul.
Mhm.
Am I only the ego? No. Why is the ego attaching so deeply? Because of protection. Okay, all right, can you relax, right? And then you start to take responsibility of it, right? And you manage it,
Mhm.
you, with your own hands, for yourself, taking care of yourself. Then you grab this energy and you give it to Mother Earth. You put it inside of a despacho, you burn it, you transmute it, but it does take a little bit of awakening first. It does take a little bit of, meditation is beautiful. Meditation is great for even cleansing those things away. But to become aware of how we contract different viruses, how we contract different contagious mental, infections, and emotional infections also, that does take some self-awareness. More than
Mhm.
consciousness, it takes awareness. Be aware of how it feels, this vibration, this resonance or dissonance.
Mhm.
Does
That's
that
okay.
make sense a little bit? Is that
Makes a lot of
a
sense.
little words?
Makes a lot of sense. We do have a question in the chat. I'm not sure. Shout out to Lamar. Thank you for joining us. He stated, "What's the preparatory protocol for each of the listed teachers?" I'm not sure what he was referring to, but that was a
How to
question.
prepare. How to prepare for each of the medicines.
For each of the medicines?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard. Think about natural, like all of nature is alkaline. So you want to be as alkaline as you can. No Coca Cola, no red meat, no alcohol, no stimulants, no synthetic neurological, neuro altering substances. Like, by no means any prescriptions that have to do with the mind, with the states of mind. Even if it's asleep, that's a mind thing also. Getting away from St. John's Wort roots, from melatonin, and different things like this, right? But more than anything, think about vegetarian. And when you're coming close to maybe like 3 days before, you want to switch it to vegan. When you go to the jungle, in the jungle, we do dietas of sometimes 7 days, sometimes could be 15 days, just drinking bobinsana for like 3 days, and then we switch to chirik sanango or yawarpanga if you want to do like a purge. There's a nothing except plant, ingestion. And the purpose of this, the reason why we do this, is to cleanse everything, all of the excess protein, excess sugars, and that way the body can absorb the medicine the best to give you the most out of an experience. when we don't do the dieta, people sometimes come and we tell them, right? We people have high addictions to caffeine, and we say no caffeine, and it turns out that they're like, like caffeine's no, there's not a problem. I already read in ChatGPT told me that caffeine no problem with ayahuasca or NAOI, and you're telling me not to, whatever, little shaman. And then so they drink ayahuasca and it's a freaking explosive diarrhea, and they're like 6 hours in the bathroom, like shitting and shitting and shitting, like, and and it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, yeah, you didn't die, but you didn't do anything that you were meant to do. The calling that you had to go and drink ayahuasca, forget about it. There wasn't none of the ancestral patterns that he was resolving. He was wiping and wiping and wiping. That's it. You know, that's all that the person was doing because they didn't follow an alkaline diet. So it's a very good question, by the way. Thank you so much for asking. With Nino Santos, there's not so much. Obviously, the red meat is heavy, especially if you eat like pork or something like this. Red meats, they can be very heavy, and then it can get you a little bit more irritable. And so
Mm.
that physicality of irritation, you go into an altered state of consciousness, and you're gonna deal with irritation in an altered state of consciousness, which can be difficult, can be very, very difficult to navigate. It's going to give you a very heavy message about yourself, and all sorts of things can happen. So for all medicines that are natural, go vegetarian, if possible vegan, right? Vegan can be a stretch for heavy meat eaters, and remember that this is just for a preparation period, right? It's not you not don't necessarily, nobody tells you that you have to become a vegan for the rest of your life, or a vegetarian for that matter. But for the preparation, we want to engage in respect. We're going to come and meet these sacred spirits, sacred Mother Ayahuasca, which is the divine feminine, or Bufo, Niño Santos, other masculine energies as well, that are the divine masculine. When we're going to go deep into those, we want to come with an offering. The fasting and changing into a vegetarian or vegan diet is that's the offering. That's like, I am offering all of these impulses to satisfy my cravings with chocolate and whatever is your choice of you know satisfaction. You refrained refrain for a little bit and think about delayed gratification. Once you come in and you did the effort, it's kind of like the two marshmallow exercise with children. Are you guys familiar with that one? It was like there's
Hmm.
some children in a group, and then they put like marshmallows, and they say like, okay, here's one marshmallow, but if you don't eat it, I'll come back and give you two. You know,
Huh.
I
have
think
you
I've
seen
heard
that
about
one?
that
Yeah.
experiment.
So that's
Hmm.
the power of delayed gratification, because what you didn't eat in the process of preparation, after, it's going to taste so much better. Not
Hmm.
only that, so you're going to be able to appreciate everything that you like so much more, and you're going to become aware later on if it has always been that satisfying or not. You're truly going to come to terms with your diet after an ayahuasca, to say like, I really don't enjoy this anymore. You evolve your taste buds a lot of times. So yeah, that's a vegan vegetarian, depending on the dose, depending on the medicine, the setting, it can go. And obviously depending on how heavy you've been engaging with different toxins, whether it is coffee or sometimes even prescription medications, not necessarily just neurochemical, but depending on your current lifestyle, it can be anything from 3-day preparation all the way up to 15 days and 21 days of preparation, right?
Mm.
Changing the lifestyle depending on where you are. Everybody's different. Yeah, good
Wow.
question. Thank you.
Yes. Wow,
Mm.
indeed.
Wow.
Man, thank you so much, Andres.
It's a good
Um,
conversation.
well, with that being stated, we are going to take a short pause. Just let everybody get reacclimated, get some water. What we're going to do next is introduce one of our sleeper tracks to keep you in the flow. And when we return, we'll continue our journey with our dear brother Andres, and we're going to dive deeper into the practices and teachings and offerings from sacred ceremony and Pachamama sacred path. So we'll be right back.
Oh.
Ashram. Secret messages.
We are cutting all cords, in all timelines, all dimensions, all realities. To any being, energy, or entity that feeds on our light, we say, you have no power here. We call our energy back from all spaces it does not belong. We declare our energetic sovereignty to the universal prime creator. We renounce, revoke, and rescind all parasitic attachments, known or unknown. Our energy is sacred. Our path is protected. We are the flame that cannot be consumed.
To all ancestral contracts, false soul bonds, deceptive guides, and illusions, this is your eviction notice. Any siphoning of energy ends now. We are no longer available for manipulation, psychic vampirism, or spiritual distortion. We invoke the full light of our divine nature. We are free from the illusion. We cancel and renounce all contracts that do not serve the evolution of our soul. We rise in the truth of who we are.
We are cutting all cords, in all timelines, all realities. We call our energy back.
Never again shall use our energy.
We reclaim our destiny. We declare our energetic sovereignty.
We are free from any
With
attempts.
the universal plan creator.
We are grateful.
We are light, we are light, we are free. We are free.
This is a sacred declaration to all parasitic cords, energetic distortions, and subtle bindings. You are now released. We take our power back 1,000-fold. Every stolen moment returns in grace. Every veiled truth now revealed. All deception dismantled. All chains dissolved. All illusions burned in divine fire.
We are free. We are free. We are free. We are free. We are free.
Sacred ashram, sacred messages.
We are cutting all cords, in all timelines, all dimensions, all realities. To any being, energy, or entity that feeds on our light, we say, you have no power here. We call our energy back from all spaces it does not belong. We declare our energetic sovereignty to the universal prime creator. We renounce, revoke, and rescind all parasitic attachments, known or unknown. Our energy is sacred. Our path is protected. We are the flame that cannot be consumed.
To all ancestral contracts, false soul bonds, deceptive guides, and illusions, this is your eviction notice. Any siphoning of energy ends now. We are no longer available for manipulation, psychic vampirism, or spiritual distortion. We invoke the full light of our divine nature. We are free from the illusion. We cancel and renounce all contracts that do not serve the evolution of our soul. We rise in the truth of who we are.
We are cutting all cords, in all timelines, all realities. We call our energy back. Never again shall use our energy. We reclaim our destiny. We declare our energetic sovereignty.
We are free from any attempts to siphon universal
prime creator.
aligned. Vibrate high.
We are free. We are free.
This is a sacred declaration to all parasitic cords, energetic distortions, and subtle bindings. You are now released. We take our power back 1,000-fold. Every stolen moment returns in grace. Every veiled truth now revealed. All deception dismantled. All chains dissolved. All illusions burned in divine fire.
We are free. We are free. We are free. We are free. We are free.
All right. We are back. Okay. So now we're going to move on to Andean cosmology. We understand that you, Andres, are you are an initiated shaman within the Andean cosmology. A little bit more about that, and also give the audience some information about the key pillars or principles in the Andean spiritual tradition, which
Mhm,
you're part of.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. The Andean path, it is a very pragmatic way of practicing consciously aware spirituality in much deeper, much more profound ways than your usual yoga traditions. Because first and foremost, the Andean path, one of the layers, one of the steps in the path of ascension, which we'll get into in shortly here, there's medicine. And a lot of yoga traditions, they don't want to work with soma and going into the shadow. It's a delicate thing, but as part of the Andean cosmology spiritual path, there's the third level of consciousness, the third rite of passage, the third step of initiation is called the Hampeg. And the Hampeg is an initiation into everything natural, everything nature, everything Mother Earth, right? Flora and fauna, right? And so the Andean path is one that you don't learn through books, you learn through personal transformation. It is not like there is um, a Bible, kind of like in Christianity, right? There's also not like Gitas or Vedas like in Hinduism that you can support yourself where like Dogen teachings or the teachings of Gautama. It's a very pragmatic oral tradition, and this is the beauty of it. It's an oral tradition. Therefore, what you receive, you can take notes. And for example, you know that in module one, I've done my best to, you know, synthesize a lot of this wisdom that it is passed orally and in a way that you can see it and understand it conceptually to be able to practice it and make it experiential, make it pragmatic, and you can transform from the inside out, from the bottom up. So in the path of ascension in the Andean cosmology is called the Kapajñan. This is from the Quero tradition. And so we have a few steps. The first step is level zero, which is what is called Pacha, like Pachamama. Pacha is just time and space, but when someone is in Pacha, it means that time and space is everything that there can be aware of. meaning like there's a homogeneous mixture of my consciousness with time and with space. This is not a very conscious state of being. Everything within time and space has influence over me. So you're going outside and you pass and you see like some trash cans on fire and people just like with like trinkets and things like that, and just like a mob going, and then someone tells you like, hey, they just killed the daughter of who and such, and you're like, what, and like a pacha will get immediately influenced and stop whatever he was doing or she was doing and get off their car to go and be part of this mob. It's like, justice for whoever, like, and so it's very influenceable type of consciousness, very chaotic, and there is not a a sense of self-awareness. There's not a sense of self. There could be a lot of intelligence, don't get me wrong. There could be uh, high levels of discernment, but not intentionally harmonizing the environments. That's the first level. The second level is runa, which is all of module one, going from pacha to runa. And going into the runa consciousness, this is where you start to become aware, conscious and aware, that it is everything is up to you. And people will say, like, well, now it cannot be up to you. You depend on the economy, you depend on politicians, you depend on all sorts of things. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about my energy, my consciousness, the way that I continue to connect to the self within me and to Father, Mother, Life, to the divine. That right there, it is up to me. And so it is the beginning of, like we were talking earlier, is the beginning of taking responsibility for ourselves, the end of conflict with the external. And so this is where we stop creating conflicts because of projections or demands or reclamations. And the embodiment of the runa consciousness is when someone starts to look inward. Now, don't get me wrong, someone will be initiated into runa, and then there'll still be, going back and forth into blaming and guilt tripping and all of these things. This is completely natural. So it is a ladder that you go like this, but in some steps, in some cases, depending on specific wounds within us, sometimes we take steps back, right? In some areas of our life, it could be that economically you start to thrive, and then your relationships, they start to go back, right? Because of different systems within. So that's the runa level, becoming aware. Even if I create a situation, becoming victimized, becoming the savior of someone, taking responsibility for hucha that is not mine, or becoming a dictator, executioner to somebody else. All of that, the runa, it is self-aware that it's creating some destruction outside and begins to take responsibility. Begins honing everything back, calling everything back. Like your song that you guys were playing, it's really beautiful. Begin taking back all of our energy, even the chaotic one. This is, making amends with all of our universe. And I have another teacher, Joan, that says that, a Paqo, which is that first level, that runa, is a energy ecologist of the environment. It's like an energy ecologist. That's her term, not mine. It's really, really insightful. And so it just gives you an idea of once you get to the Paqo level and you're at runa, that's, you start to cease, the creation of conflict, and you start to now take responsibility with the purpose of evolving my universe, of making my relationships better, of saying thank you more in a more heartfelt way, of looking at someone in the eyes and like igniting their spark with it. Things like this, little things, but a lot of it, throughout the day. And then from there comes the hampe. So once we start to reflect on how to harmonize the personal power starts to grow, and at the runa level, which is level one, from 0 to 1, at Runa, you start to feel very good. Your relationships get better. You don't suffer the responsibilities that you have anymore. If you have to wake up early to work, or you have to listen to your friend who's like depressed all the time, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is taking place, you're actually enjoying life now. And then from there, your personal power starts to get very plump, very nice. You feel, like this substance within you is like, yes, I can do this. And you feel very optimistic about what you can do, all sorts of things like this. And then from there, that personal power starts to evolve into natural power. And the natural power is the beginning of the second level. From 0 Pacha, the first one is Runa, and the next one up is called Hampeg. And Hampeg is the evolution of my personal power into natural power. Now, this is the personal power into natural power, like this guy that you have over here. He's beyond personal power, and he's out in nature. And he's very likely someone like this, like Sebastian, or different teachers that I personally have the pleasure of calling friends. They live in nature, in the mountains, and they call the rain. They push away wind, and they call the lightning when it is meant to be. And so that's not necessarily the purpose, though, but this is how much more power you start to get. This is obviously all the cosmology. When you're talking about spirituality, is that power now extends over influence of nature. But what happens to the person that is going from Runa to Hampeg is the harmonization of everything natural within. So the way that different organs, different tissues, different cells are operating, everything goes into nature. So if there's anything that is not naturally operating, you begin influencing these different stuck or deviated systems that have been corrupted. For example, you say, for example, your pancreas is not working so well. So the true Hampeg is has the power over himself, and sometimes over others too, primarily over him or herself, to be able to raise the energy of that one organ so that it starts to produce what it needs to produce and operate in the way that it has to operate. So that's the Hampeg. It's a little bit more accurate, more acute, more precise type of direction of consciousness. Then there, um, it becomes also very familiar with different states of consciousness now. Now it's not just about the third dimension. The Hampeg starts to have access to the fourth dimension also, which we call the Causa y Pacha. Is the existence beyond time and space. And you can enter this through astral projection, you can enter this with medicine, you can enter this in dreams, all sorts of things, right? All of that otherness then that is not here and now tangible, like the tangibility that you're able to experience. And so the Hampeg then starts to go and see the different layers of the Causa y Pacha, different sacred spaces that can be created in the fourth dimension, different energies, entities, teachers, ancestry. It gets very deep into everything that it is imaginary to the mind, but that exists, like the patterns of your great great grandma or great great grandpa that might still be like all of a sudden pushing a button within you. All of that is explored in the Causa Pacha. And then the medicines, of course, right? Understanding different states of consciousness. All of that is the Hampeg. And the Hampeg goes through, a couple of years of consistent, devoted type of work with medicines and with all of these states, and with specific principles of consciousness, the evolution of the four paradigms, the evolution of Ayni, and everything that we learn in going from Pacha to Runa, then continues now. It begins now to give fruit. It begins now to blossom, and how to manage all of those fruits from the Andean codes, for example, of Anya, Muna, Causa, Yacha, Yanka, Ayni. All of the principles that you learn going from Pacha to Runa, they now take the life of their own. and you start to see them flowing outside, from you into the world, and it's beautiful, and then from there it goes into the Pampa Misayok. There's a few levels in between the Hampeg and the Pampa Misayok. There's the Misayok. You could be initiated into Barayok. There's roles of consciousness, but the Misayok and the Barayok, that are like milestones that take you into the next level, which is the Pampa Misayok. Pampa is he or she that has the level. Pampa is to level. They have the capacity, he or she becomes someone that is embodied of power to level all situations. So someone that is Pampa Misayo has the power within him or herself to heal everything. You know, it starts to work with different energies like Apus, with deeper aspects of Mother Earth, also of Pachamama herself, Alpamama. And so it is a more masterful type of use of energy, a more masterful use of consciousness and awareness. It now, Pampa Misayo has the power to, like my friend Ryan, even though that he was brought into the Hindu cosmology, understanding, he's very much a Pampa Misayo, even though he doesn't have a misa or anything. The power that he has to look at someone in the eye and then ignite, a fire within. I had many metaphysical experiences with him when I was, sort of his student at the beginning of my path. And these are called siddhis in Sanskrit. These are called like
Yes.
powers. These are called powers that you start to have. You say a few words and things happen. You basically you clap and you can clean a whole room, the energy of a room. Different things that you can do. Healings, animo wakai, recovery, soul recovery processes, all sorts of things. You start to get very deep. Now, the Pampa Misayok is yok means carrier, and so we have Pacha, Runa, Ham, Pampa Misayok. That's the fourth level of consciousness, the Pampa Misayok. The Pampa Misayok is Pampa Misa Yok. Yok is carrier. Misa is the actual Misa Mesa, is the personal universe of he who carries it. And Pampa is the power to level everything. So is he or she who carries a Misa with the power to level all fields. In Quechua, the term Pampachai is similar to forgiveness. But in Quechua, in Andean cosmology, the Pampachai process is to level the field. If there's a conflict in between you and I, Pampachai is a process of me leveling the field in between you and I. If you are higher than me or I am higher than you with more righteousness to be upset or whatever, the Pampa Misayok levels the field so that we can be, at the same communication level, we can understand and come to a harmonization. It's a simplistic way to understand the Pampachai, the Pampa being the prefix of Pampa Misayok. And then from there is the Alto Misayok. And I received the Alto Misayok 2022. So it's going to be 3 years in a few months. And the Alto Misayok is someone that has been obviously first and foremost initiated into Pampa Misayok. You cannot skip any of these ones. And it is levels of consciousness that are basically that the initiation itself is like a welcoming. They give you the seed, and there's a karpai process, which is a transference of power. The karpai is if I am a fully established Paqo and you're in Pacha, then I can go and do a karpai process where I give you my power, but it's infused with my awareness and my consciousness, and so I give it to you. So it's similar, like if I have like a torch and you have a torch that is off, there's no fire, and I come with my torch and I give you the light. That fire is now burning within you. But it's the fire of self, is the fire of spirit, the divine. And so then, you give the light. So in a karpa, when you get into Alto Misayok, it's the same thing. You receive from a different Alto Misayok that carries that consciousness. You receive that light, and it's more like a seed within you. That it is your responsibility. In this case, it's my responsibility to water it, to give it the proper nourishment for this specific type of seed. that has to do with the Apus now. An Alto Misayok becomes an ambassador of different Apus, of great um, mentor mountains, that are taking care of, consciousness of Mother Earth. And so the Alto Misayok, being the fifth level, is he or she that commands the lightning, and it is obviously the wind and different elements are always not necessarily subservient, but at the disposition of this person. And so when I was up in Mount Apuao Sangate in Peru, uh, my teacher Nicolas is like, okay, you want to be an alto misayo, right? And I'm like, yes, yes, teacher. And he's like, okay, call the wind, call the lightning, call the lightning. And I'm like, okay, it was no a beautiful sky, but directly above us there was two circular rainbows, like
Mhm.
from making a perfect loop, and then outside of it another one's like big omen, which has to do with the rainbow is the bridge is basically the threshold in between dimensions. It's in
Mhm.
between the third dimension and the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. So there was the two, right? So it was a huge, really beautiful omen, and it was based on this alone that they say like, okay, you're being sort of chosen, right? But still, I had to prove myself that I could do this, and I've never done it before. So I went into a very deep space of myself, having known bufo, having known ayahuasca and all of the other medicines. I go very deep into myself and I start, no cancani, Andres, I get my rattle and I start just to invoke, putting in my mouth, all of the energies of every single experience that I've had with the wind, with the lightning, with the water. And it was maybe like about, 10 minutes at most. And everything was dark, like no more rainbows, no more nothing. Everything got clouded, started hailing, and like boom, like freaking like lightnings all around us. It was truly magnificent. And then it started like this lightning, and then the teacher is like, okay, we gotta go up the mountain now. It's like, no, like I don't want to get hit by lightning, because that's the way that they choose Alto Misayos. Nature chooses an Alto Misayos by striking him or her with lightning, like Maria Pasamachaca, like Rolando, my Alto Misayos, Rolando and Guillermo Pauker. They got hit by lightning, both of them at the same time, and one of them killed him, and then it hit him again, a second one, and then the second one revived him. It's just supernatural type of events that, to be completely honest, I wasn't up for. Back then I'm like, no, I still have a lot of things that I'm trying to create, and the main function of an alto misayo is selflessness, and I truly wasn't ready to be fully selfless, because there's still I have responsibilities. I have my children. I have the business, the organization that I am, that is fulfilling my purpose. I have books that I want to create. I have like all sorts of desires still that I want to accomplish, and I am not ready to become like a wandering yogi, like a wandering priest going through the world like they are. They walk all around, and but the children, they sometimes they don't see them and things like this. And so I basically held back. I was still able to receive the initiation, but I consciously said, it's probably going to take me a good 10 years to get to the point where I feel like I accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish in my life, materially speaking, mundane, plain and simple mundane things. I want to be able to leave enough sustenance for my children to do whatever they want and things like this, right? Obviously, not to spoil them, but to be able to have enough, just enough. I don't need like billions or millions or anything like that, but enough. And so there's this delay that I planned for, and I said like I will continue refining the Pampa Misayog within me, and I will honor this. And then the year, this past year in 2024, 2 years later, I went back again and I received a reaffirmation of the Alto Misayog, and it's like amazing, beautiful, and the whole thing. I went deep down into the Quero Mountains. I spent time with the Alto Misayog there. And so the Alto Misayog is selflessness, and it's there's a lot of power, and it commands entities, it commands consciousness, energy manifested or manifested at will, right? But it had been already many years since I had these experiences of being able to, you know, cast out different heavy entities and, you know, demonic essences and things like that, and cleanse myself and purge and all of this. But I recognize that there's still, you know, subconscious. I haven't fully become free from many of those subconscious little things that come still and give like a little bit of a taste to the situations. You know, like you know, like little surprises, you know, like roller coaster type of things. It's not necessarily always pleasurable, but it definitely makes life very dynamic and exciting and things like this, that it is more enjoyable for sure. And so that's the Alto Misayo. The Alto Misayo has a very deep connection at will with animals, at will with other people, one to one. It's able to understand purpose of soul purpose from the people that he or she interacts with, and you know, many other things. That the Alto Misayo is, it's a very unique type of expression of that, right? And then from there, that's it. That's how far you are able to get initiated into. The next initiations are metaphysical initiations. This is the next one up is Christ consciousness. You know, the next one up is Joshua, Buddha, and it's called the Kura Hakuyek. And the Kura Hakuyek is he or she who's able to travel interdimensionally, intergalactically also, is able to adapt his or her electromagnetic field to be able to exist. You know, it's dematerialization by location, and in that travel, you know, there's a lot of stories in the cosmology where some of these kurahakuyaks are able to travel to different planets with brothers and sisters of other star systems, and they bring a ton of wisdom, a ton of knowledge, divine, of course, right? That for them to be able to be there, they have to adapt to those atmospheres, to those gravities, to those different realities that exist. And so the Kura Hakuyeg is one with sound, is one with time and space. It's able to collapse time and space. You're able to experience these yourself with a very deep viaje or ayahuasca, and you're able to go out of time, and you're able to experience tomorrow as if it happened 3 years ago, and experience, you know, 3 years ago as if it hasn't happened, where like time starts to dissolve. All of these things you're able to have glimpses of what it experiences, but it's always under the influence. The Kura Hakuyik is one with the nature of that, with no need for any stimulants. Is able to go in and out of spaces, different things like this. It's a very this is the Christ consciousness, of course, right? It is the expression, the most purest and divine expression of mother father life, of mother father God. And then from there, it continues, right? The evolution. These are theoretical now, but there's a few more. The Altomisayok is the fifth, Kurahakuyek is the sixth, and then from here it continues in the Inca Malku, which is like a zygote egg that, you know, gestates for, you know, I think it's like tens of thousands of years, and this becomes later on the Sapan Inca when it bursts, when it opens up, and then finally to get to what is called the last stage, which is the Inti, and you become a sun itself. You become the sun, not the sun, you know, Taita Inti that we have, but in a different galaxy, in a different time and space, you become a sun itself that sustains life for trillions and trillions and trillions, quadrillions of life forms for the evolution of this same. And all of those life forms, even if it's a blade of grass, right, it's in itself evolving as something like you have, like I have, from amoebas to bacteria to sometimes viruses to more complex life forms within different kinds of animals and insects. And we finally evolved to be able to be fit to this life form of humanity, which is self-aware and self-conscious now, like a blade of grass, like a tree. And then we continue in this evolution. And the next tangible evolution for a human being, you know, for the soul, is to become the sun. You know, this is obviously the cosmology of the end. the Hindu cosmology is a little bit different, but it is understood also that the sun is a being that is alive.
Mm.
How to get there, there's not such a direct pathway of presence, but there's a lot of wisdom that sustains the evolution of consciousness as well. So that's a little bit of my history all the way up to the initiation into Alto Misayo. I don't claim myself like a fully established Alto Misayo, because it's a lifetime type of process. Right? It's a whenever you see someone that says like I'm an Alto Misayo, it's great that they can identify themselves to what they're looking for, right? To where they're directing themselves. But there's many different levels and layers of understanding, of different layers of self-awareness, the resources within, the capacities to sustain, to truly be able to show something for it. Just calling yourself an Alto Messiah doesn't really make it. Is what you're able to flow as, what you can do, the manifestations, etc., etc. So, and the other steps maybe you've had in your past. Both of you guys have had interactions with Christ consciousness manifested in different beings. I think maybe you have experienced something in medicine or in your meditations where you've experienced.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
These
I
are
know.
these are states of consciousness that are available to everybody as a human being. Joshua himself said it. Like Jesus said, "Better things than I did will you do."
Hmm.
Nobody really wanted to hear that. I don't care about how you multiply and fish. Just give me something to eat right now. Here's water.
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah. Super
it's
powerful.
yeah.
One of the things, Andres, I wanted to ask you about, like you talking about the journey of like the Paqo into the Alto Misayo, and the different levels, of initiation. One of the things that really came into mind, actually two things, but I want to start off with this. Um, when it comes to being on that path and experiences for the initiate, what are some of the pitfalls, I guess, karmically, that people can or may encounter when it comes to being on that path?
This is a great question because one of the things that I have personally experienced, it really does depend on your devotion to the path. But once you are in the path and you can recognize the path as something that it is alive and supporting you at all times, the path actually is a big aura of protection around you. I've gotten into very dark spaces, not knowing that they were dark. They felt like seducing, and I was seduced into this like altered states of consciousness when I was like very deep into Nino Santos. One time, this is like many years ago, and so I was very deep into the experience, and like all of a sudden, I start to feel like, oof, like this energy started to come in a very subtle way, and like all of a sudden, like I'm feeling like, oof, like bliss and aroused, almost like to a sexual degree a little bit, and I'm like deep inside and like, oof, and I start to see this energy, and it's like a little bit dark, but with like some light tones here and there. And so as I am experiencing this energy and I'm connecting to it, then like all of a sudden, like I get hit with a lightning. Obviously, it wasn't like a little lightning, but I felt like the heavens opened, like my ceiling opened, and then there's like this energy that just came like boom, like it hit me in the chest, and I'm like, like I'm like sit up and I like sober, and I was like 4 grams in, like it's not that easy, but like I'm like, oh, like my heart's like beating, and I'm like, and I recognize that this like woke me up, from this experience that I was having, and I'm like, I go back in and I calm the heartbeat and I start breathing, and I'm like, okay, and then I'm like, I recognize your power. Who are you? And I heard this resounding from all around me. I heard this sounding voice that says, I am the Capacnan in Spanish. It was more energetic than verbal, but you get the point. It was like the Capacnan. And the Kapaknyan is the name of this spiritual path. And I'm like, thank you. I am here. I am here. I am here. And then I asked the second question. I'm like, what is the meaning of this? Why was I interrupted? Because it was a total interference where I was going. It was a total intervention. And I'm like, what is this? Why? And I heard very clearly, that is not your path. That is not this path. You know? So it was some hedonistic type of entity, energy, that I was not very well versed to deal with. I was not experienced about. I didn't understand what even the term hedonism was back then. But I received this blessing, and I said, like, I completely understand. I don't need more explanation. I said, like, here. Obviously I had to understand much, again and again I had to understand what this was. But it was a warning. It was a warning for me to, not be following. I'm a Scorpio. you know I think we've spoken about different. No, this is also module 2, but you learn to understand different impulses within each of the signs, right? From the Mayan cosmology, if you want to go and see the Solkin and the Mayan calendar, all of the archetypes have a specific frequency, right? Just to be a little bit more general with the Scorpio, because it's only 12 or 13 right now. There's the Scorpios are very, very akin to the darkness, and also they have a high degree of sensuality, in them, magnetism. And so this energy that came, it felt so coherent with me. It felt so what I'm all about, give me more, and then to get that lightning in my chest that said, like, this is not your path. That's
That's
not your
right.
path. And I'm like, okay, wait, but this is my essence. And then you start to all of these questions come. It's like, why and where, and like how does this play then? Like, what is the whole meaning of all of this? And then this is where we start to get into what is called Urania Kausai, which is your essence when you're born. It is influenced by different celestial bodies. What is who doing? Whoever, from the sun to Mars to Venus to the Earth itself, the moon, how far, how close it is, and different star systems that are shining, and you don't see it even through the day. There's a lot of energy that is coming in, different kind of neutrinos and quarks. And if you read I don't have it here, but no tienes allá de pura casualidad el libro it's the beginning of the whole beginning of human design, right? Where it speaks about uh, leptons, and it speaks about all of this. It's very insightful and very high degree, high type of knowledge. Muchas gracias. So it's this system. I don't know if you guys know it. There's a lot of wisdom out there, guys, and it is all complementary. But the understanding in Andean cosmology is that different star systems have different influence on you, and then you call yourself an Aries, or you call yourself a Cancer, or you call yourself whatever. And so this influence, where I say, like, well, I am a Scorpio, that's just the influence that was present when you were born. You don't need to abide by that. You can use it and understand how it works, that you can make the most out of this interaction of what you carry already as an imprint, but not to define you. Because once you start to get into the spiritual path, you're going to see that those influences, like, for example, Scorpio, they say that the archetype of Scorpio is very vengeful, right? But this is not a nice trait, so how can you be my essence? This is the kind of understanding. So you not to go against what your essence is, because that's not what it is. Your Scorpio is not your essence, just the influence that you've identified as a newborn, right? It's like the baselines. Obviously, you have a lot of baselines from mom and dad when you're 9 months in your mom's belly, and she's cravings and all of this, and like, I want beans with cheese, and like all of this, like all of that type of, like, and in sadness, and maybe she was crying because dad didn't want to step up, or she was going to be a single mom, whatever it was. Like, all of those are baselines also, right? But there's baselines from are genetics, and then there's baselines from higher degrees of energy, pachatata type of energy, divine essences. And so that's the Urania Causai. So in the Andean cosmology, we understand that we go through this one lifetime with a specific set of guidelines that we can get to understand very clearly to fulfill our purpose, our sole purpose of liberation and enlightenment, getting to the Kura Hakuyek and beyond. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit of how that plays.
Perfect. That's
Uh,
perfect.
Man,
That's perfect.
you,
That leads
you want to
me.
ask the next question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, that almost like he knew where we were going.
Yeah.
My next question would be um, the divine feminine and the divine masculine. How is that balanced within this tradition?
it's through a principle that it's called Yanantin and Masintin.
Mm,
The Pachamama Pachatata, it's the source of the Big Bang. You know, it's when these two electromagnetic forces, electric and magnetism, electricity and magnetism, when they come and they're in mutual restraint, they generate this infinite source of power that creates the cosmos as we know it, as we've studied it. And the essence of that Pachamama Pachatata, it continues to flow, and it are the forces of electricity and magnetism inside of every atom in all of existence. So when you're breathing in Pachamama and Pachatata. They are in equilibrium. If they would cease to be in equilibrium, all of matter would collapse. They say it if in the Old Testament, I think it was, if Jehovah was to withdraw its breath, you know, there's a few references to this. This is the same, you know, like the balance was taken away, you know, the whole collapse. And it's been told also by science, right? If you were to compress all of matter and take, you know, there's 99.9999999% empty space. If you basically just keep what is actually tangible protons, electrons, and neutrons, and you put them all together, you would have like a cube about this size. Like the whole, you know, the Earth would collapse into, you know, a very energetic, you know, cube. You know, but that's the space, right? That's Pachamama and Pachatata, electricity and magnetism. And this is also energies within you, feeling and thinking. Thinking is more masculine. The right use of mind, you know, it's masculinity. Perspective, getting not so much perception, but perspective, to get perspective, to put things into perspective, to be able to discern, to be able to say, no, that's not the way, this is the way. All of that is intelligence, that is masculine. Masculine is intelligence, feminine is magnetism, and it is more love. Love and intelligence. Pachamama, Pachatata. Pachamama is love, Pachatata is intelligence. When you have them both together, you start to see them flow within you. If you connect deeply in samadhi, if you connect deeply in meditation, and you start to understand these energies and you let them flow and heal, then what starts to take place is that you start to experience an intelligence that is loving and a love that is very intelligent, right? Not an attached, disharmonious, conflictive love, and not an intelligence that it is unempathetic. It is an intelligence that considers, an intelligence that unifies. And so that's the essence of how we experience it now in the world. The way that we see it is an unbalance. It's an imbalance of these two energies within itself. The feminine can be very, very magnetic, you know, overly magnetic, and the feminine, not because there's a bad masculine, the feminine itself, right? The feelings traumatized and all of this. And the intelligence also lowers the capacities to observe greener pastures in the future rather than like, oh my god, you know, like everything's apocalyptic, every day is an apocalypse with Trump and like with Russia, and like, you know, like everything's, you know, and this is what they intentionally feed, right? It's a form of control. So there's a need for us, for you who are in the spiritual path. There's a need for you to learn how to balance these energies. In the Andean cosmology, the masculine comes from up from above, from the heavens, Pachatata. In Pachamama, the feminine, the divine feminine, comes from within. And so there's some exercises that we do, right, to be able to create Wilka, which is a very powerful concentration of this balance. But also, when we're dealing with people, you don't ever see someone that it is uh, balanced 100% in between their masculine and their feminine, primarily because of biology, but second, also, I could be a male with very feminine. For example, myself, I was raised in a family, in a household where I had two sisters, my mom, an aunt lived with us, and I had two cleaning ladies at all times, when I was a kid. And so it's all women in my house. My dad would be like traveling and he would come once every 2 weeks or something like this, from time to time, right? But I was exposed to a lot of femininity, all of those hormones and pheromones, and I learned to be very in touch with my emotions as a kid. Obviously, as a kid, already you are by default very connected, right? But even more. So I grew up very feminine, extremely feminine. I was like very sensitive to people's gazes and things like this. And my masculine was low, so I was predominantly feminine. With medicine and with Wachuma specifically, some of Bufo also, I started to heal with Mother Ayahuasca. I started to heal my feminine, my overwhelmment to my emotions, And instead of calling myself an empath, I'm like, I'm just feeling things, man. Like I don't have a conflict with the intensities, but that's through Mother Ayahuasca. And then with the masculine, I started to make right use of my mind. And so then I start to have like a little bit of a sense, I understand what I'm feeling and I can feel really clearly my perspective. So there starts to be a connection between mind and heart. Now, and more practically, when you meet someone, you can see they're too mental or they're too driven. There's too much yang, too much masculinity within them, or too much yin, too much femininity within them. Which one is predominantly? And depending on what you're interacting, how do you want to come and complement? If it's two males, it could be sometimes a little rough, right? Sometimes we have to, if it's my partner, because she is um, in the crown stage and she's like very masculine with her healing processes and of her cycle, of her moon cycle, and I see her too driven or too masculine, then I can start to adapt myself into my femininity to complement and to come in and fulfill some harmony in between us, for example, right? So it is not so much as who am I and how people need to see me. I am a woman or I am a man or anything like this. Is what is needed here, right? It's not about you needing to call me whatever determined, denomination of, genders and things like this. Is about what is required in this moment for this interaction, to be harmonious, for us to be able to create harmony. And this is what is called Yanantin and Masintin. Yanantin in itself is understanding the complementarity. If you are predominantly feminine and I am feminine too, then I need to start to make use of perspective and drive, consciousness, protection, all of the qualities that are masculine. And then I bring those to the table, and you, in your femininity, you're gonna feel okay with me. There's we can collaborate in some way. And then there is the opposite also, right? If you're being too masculine, then maybe I go into the feminine and I become softer, I become nurturing, I become healing, I become spacious. And everything that has to do with intuition. I start to complement the masculine outside of me for the purpose of creating harmony in between this interaction between us. That's Yanantin. Masintin is if I come with Ray. ¿Le contestas, por favor? If I come with Ray and Ray is masculine, lo va a entender. And then, pero si no tú hablas inglés. Sorry about that, guys. And then there's, I am masculine in myself as well. So then understanding what the two masculine energies are, we come together for a purpose of masculinity, right? So we are intentionally creating something that are required by two masculine. For example, we need to build a bridge, we need to carry like big bags in our back. I'm not being sexist here. I'm just, like big men carrying like things like that. I'm being simplistic. But there's going to be some purposes that a lot of femininity won't won't be up to the task, right? A lot of femininity and emotion, it is not going to be adequate for some roles that have to do with the masculine, that the masculine need to fulfill, and vice versa, right? If I am coming with you, Alicia, and you're very feminine, and we have to say start to understand a situation, and the situation needs to be understood by empathy, right? Because there's someone in the group, in our friendship group, that it is going through something very, very heavy, and that person doesn't need to be told like you need to stop and do this and do that. They don't need to solve it. They just need to hold space, right? So then you and I, we come together with the purpose of using our femininity together. This is also masintin, male and male or female and female, for the purpose of contributing not just one person with the feminine, but two people with the feminine. Then it is a more powerful feminine approach. Or to people with the masculine, I can do more with three guys, if we need to lift up a car or whatever, it doesn't matter. And that right there becomes a more masculine approach for a specific desired goal. So those are the two ways, Yanantin and Masintin, but always understanding the purpose of each of the two energies. And for that, before I can even make conscious use of this, I have to go and understand, okay, how is my masculine? No, my masculine is by the floor, not through the roof. It's actually like squashed because my dad always told me that, I was a piece of shit, or that I was never going to amount to anything. And my self-esteem is, ugh, so my masculinity is going to be like very submissive. I've been rejected my whole time. I reject myself now before others reject me. I abandon myself now before others abandon me. Things like this, So we need to start to take a look at what is taking place first within my masculinity, and then what is taking place within my femininity. Do I nourish my feelings? Do I accept my feelings, or do I project them out? Even if it's anger, which could be considered more masculine sometimes, like the dominant masculine, of the ages of the Inquisition and like all of this. There's this understood that some feelings and emotions can be a little bit more dominantly masculine or feminine. It doesn't matter. Within me is all my femininity. What am I feeling? Emotions that I can feel, that's my femininity. And that's my right hemisphere also. And so then I start to take a look at how much acceptance do I have about myself, for each of these emotions. What is my relationship with each of these emotions? If I have bad relationship with a few emotions, then my femininity is not well balanced. And so then this is the path of Yanantin and Masintin, is an introspection path, is understanding who we are within to be able to evolve what is outside, consciously, intentionally, purposefully. Mm-hmm.
That was awesome.
I'm sweating, man. I'm sweating right now.
I just want to say once again, brother, just thank you. You have been cooking all evening.
Yes, he has.
But man, I don't even know where to start. I have so many, but one of the questions that I do want to ask you is, when it comes to lineage, how does that play into the not only just the path of the shaman like yourself, but when it comes in relation to Andean traditions and cosmology, or it's all the same, Andean cosmology?
In Hinduism is also very similar as well. When I was a part of Art of Living, and when I was with a Yogananda and Self-Realization Fellowship and in Ananda Village, lineage is key, is very important, right? And the lineage of Ananda, Yogananda, it goes back to Babaji, and also Joshua is part of their lineage. Because it was Joshua who appeared to Yogananda to tell him to come to the East, and that's the spiritual lineage, right? When you're talking about your ancestral lineages, your genetics, mom, dad, etc., etc., you're talking about the spiritual, or you're talking about your ancestry?
Well, I was talking about the role that ancestors play when it comes to Andean spiritual life and cosmology.
So let's break it down. There's the two parts. There's like the ancestors, my personal ancestors,
Okay.
meaning my dad, my grandparents, my great grandparents who have gone through the Andean path, or not like that. Or are you talking about my Alto Misayok and his Alto Misayok and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I'm talking about your Alto Misayok and so
So
on and
the
so forth.
spiritual. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So it is it is the spiritual lineage. It is, in my personal experience, it is a requirement. It is necessary.
Mm.
Can you make it without it? It's possible. It's possible. There's a few people like Eckhart Tolle, but it's not as common to see someone that is able to reach a state of coherence and congruence and be able to have a high degree of self-awareness that has not been supported to get to those levels, right? And all of this support is what we're talking about. Basically, the spiritual lineage are the non-physical, it's the spiritual beings that are, here when you want to perceive them. They're part of the mesh of Akash and oneness and the divine, and they are specific to a path that is very similar to the one that you're taking. They've gone through the road of going from Pacha to Runa to Hampek, Pampamisayo, Kalpamisayo, Kurahakuyek. And so if you're choosing to walk a similar path, right, then there's a lot of similarities of what the ways that you're going to grow through. There's a lot of similarities in the ways that you're going to shed a lot of the things that need to be shed, ancestry patterns, hucha, traumas, etc. There's a lot of those similar ways that you're going to go and feel as you walk through this path, which is an accelerated path. uh, they're going to be observing you as you go through this, and it's not very different than Christ consciousness path. It is not as intellectual as Buddhism or Hinduism. It is more pragmatic. It's more of doing. And I'm not saying that Hinduism needs to be conceptual, right, or mental, intellectual. But there's a lot of wisdom that you have to read, and you can read and read and read again and again, and it can get you a little bit stuck in concepts, right? And this is that natural aspect of the ego. The ego likes to conceptualize everything. It's actually one of the things that they teach in the Ashtavakra Gita, and the Ashtavakra Gita in itself is a very, very thin, small book, But one of the things that Ashtavakra tells Janaka, King Janaka, is that, you need to shut your mouth when you're going to speak ill about someone. Like, do not speak ill of anyone, because Father Divine is in everybody's heart. You need to listen to your body. And the third one, most important, is you need to practice, right? Which is everything that the MDM path is practice, right?
Mm.
So listening to the body comes as a consequence of the practice, And you also, part of the practice is knowing when to stop practice, right? When to give, time for the rituals to settle. All of the energy that you're moving with the rituals, when do they have to settle? That stopping the practice is part of practice itself, right? So there's when you initiate in the Kapachnan, think about it as a road. If you close your eyes and you see like a radiating golden road ahead of you, in front of you, that it might be winding here and there, but it's always ahead, always forward. This denotes evolution. This denotes, stepping forward in the way that you are growing spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And that road in itself has a ton of teachers, has a ton of people that have walked it, that they've actually become part of the road itself. This path of ascension is a something that with time, at the beginning you might not feel it or see it. You first feel it, and then you are able to actually visualize it sometimes. And there's teachers. One of the things that unites all of the teachers is the misa itself. The misa, it's like a radio. When you have a misa, it's like you have a communication device to every single teacher of the Kapahñan, that it is devoted to grow and evolve through this path of ascension, this particular path of ascension. So with your misa, you can talk to different people, have been kurhakuyek, meaning other teachers that have touched upon and established themselves in Christ consciousness, like Jeshua was. And there's plenty of them. As to where Christianity has only one, which is Jesus Christ. And they don't understand it, but like for example, San Francisco de Assis or Saint Germain, and there's a lot of saints, right, that have gotten to the Christ consciousness level, just like Joshua did. San Francisco de Assisi used to do all sorts of miracles, and other teachers too, right? They say that the disciples of Joshua, once he transcended, they were able to not only speak in tongues but do miracles as well. Like all of that power was infused into them as well. So, anyways, long story short, the path of ascension of the Kapahñan includes a lot of different teachers, a lot of different priests that have gotten Pacharuna Hampek Pampamisayok Altomisayok and gotten to the Kurahakuyek, which is the last human possible potential step that you can take before you transcend. Right? And when you transcend directly into the fifth dimension or above. You don't have to go through the fourth dimension sorting, what was missing in this life. You don't have to go through the next dimension, which is the fourth one, the Causa y Pacha. You don't have to spend another, infinite. It doesn't matter. Time doesn't exist over there, like it anymore. Anyways, but you don't have to spend some time reconciling different things. You can go straight into a dimension of pure love, of pure flow, of full acceptance and unity and oneness and consistent joy and bliss and laughter the whole time, is exuberation, bliss, grace. There's a lot of everything that humanity looks for. It's right there, And so the teachers, especially when you are working devotedly and in a reverent way in this path, you have deep respect in your heart to the point where you can actually feel love for this, this blessing. It's interesting because I was like reading the messages from the people in module 1 right now, and they're ranting about how much of a blessing they feel when they're like walking the path, and it's like what we're talking about here is it's such a blessing, like that lightning that I tell you that it hit me, it struck me in my heart, and like it woke me up from a potential destructive path. And there's going to be also a lot of different brothers and sisters of the path, of the same path, that are there the moment that you want them to be. So there are friends that are not time. You can have conversations with them. It's just a matter of closing your eyes, going within, and then feeling their presence. And then like all of a sudden you're speaking to, Don Manuel Quispe or Maria Pasa Machaca, who's still alive, speaking to different teachers, that are part of lineage, that are, only wanting for you to experience what they've been able to experience as well, with nothing owed. There's no like, it's like I'm gonna get more power, because that's not this kind of path. This path is a path of selflessness into love.
Preach.
There's other paths. There's other paths that they give you, but they give you so that they can keep your energy and your consciousness hostage. Santeria, like doing witchcraft of like amarres and all sorts of things. There's nothing to hold on to. This is like all freely given. You don't owe them anything, and they don't owe you anything either. They come and just assist. However, it is in our best interest to understand how do we maintain a good relationship of giving and receiving. Giving and receiving. And so then now you come into Ayni, you come into divine reciprocity with divine beings like Jeshua. You have a relationship with divine beings, and so you start to complement your spirituality more and more, and get more profound and more self-aware, more intelligent, more loving. It starts to live through you, then it starts to speak through you too also.
Speaking to my spirit
right now at this very moment.
Yes.
One thing that came to mind for me while you were talking, right before you started talking about Ayni, was sovereignty.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
and what that feels like to
Mhm.
be in that relationship of reciprocity and not and to have that flow. Um, yeah, sovereignty.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Mm,
No,
very important
it's
right now.
not having sovereignty, not having autonomy, being in bondage because of another being, another person, another entity. It's such a valuable experience.
mm,
How can you appreciate freedom if you've never experienced being lost, right? Being bounded, being bound to someone, or being, oppressed.
mm,
Once you experience the freedom, it's like,
mm.
you're able to savor it. And
Yes.
so, yeah,
And
people that,
appreciate.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, there's deeper levels. Sometimes we can, be very quick to conceptualize, like, they did some witchcraft to me or something like this, and it's like, okay, well, it's just for the purpose of me knowing more freedom. Okay, and like, how am I not appreciating freedom right now? Like, in which ways? And understanding the ways of shadow, it's shamanism. It's a understanding that both light and shadow is part of the whole same divine, divine aspect of existence. So it's appreciating the lows as much as the highs. Is what is able to free us from the attachment and the bondage with a lot of the ill intentions and things like that. Yeah.
Whew. Sometimes when you talk, you just take us on a journey. It's like we're on a
Yeah.
road.
And it's like a weight lifted when we come into these profound levels of thought. It
Mhm.
truly is. Um,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Sometimes when I kind of like move to the side, like I finish and I keep telling Via, my partner, I tell her, like, I'm high without weed right now. Like, it's a natural, just connection with something that expands. So I appreciate it too. Thank you for the questions. Thank you.
yes, yes. Thank you,
Yeah.
brother.
I have a question about post integration.
Yep.
Um, a lot of people, like you said earlier, medicines have become quite popular, um, and a lot of people are not as conscientious um, when doing it. Like a lot of people don't put as much effort into it and have not um, done what we may call the work before giving people medicine. Um, there's a before, which you talked about, and that's preparation and how important preparation is, and things that can result from a lack thereof. Um, but then there's also something that takes place afterwards, and that's referred to as post integration. Can you give us a little bit more information about why post integration is so important?
And when you're talking about post integration, you're talking about the integration work that happens after the retreat.
Yes,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Gotcha. And just to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, we're not talking about the people that serve without preparation, right? We're talking about the work specifically, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. The integration of the work. I had one teacher. You guys, I don't think that you guys ever met him, but you know, um, he's my first Andean teacher, Salvador Chava. He um, I asked him because integration has always been like a big theme that people talk a big game about it, right?
Mhm.
But then I asked him, is like, I'm not feeling like all of the talks about integration and all of this, like, what is integration to you? Is like, when do you do the integration? I asked him, and he said, like, integration, you do it as you go, you know, as you go, in the moment, in the present moment, you do integration. Because a lot of people say, like, no, you got to take time to sit down and reflect and write down and journal, and all of those things are great, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing like the present moment to be able to have an awareness of the contrast between what you're feeling and what you're experiencing here and now, and the teachings that you have been exposed to through the medicine, right? Bufo tells you, don't worry about it. It's all love. All is accepted, etc., etc. No, it's integrate, all alternatives. And then you come here and you're like fighting with one, right? So in that moment, you have an opportunity to practice what you've like, have experienced. And the more you practice, the more you're teaching through action. You're teaching the ego. You're teaching also the subconscious mind, because every intentional act, every intentional behavioral action, comportamiento, all of that, becomes a ritual that then reprograms the subconscious also. You're showing your ego, and then you're reprogramming the subconscious also, so that you can be in alignment within yourself. The way you feel and the way that you express is coherent. There's a congruence in your actions, in your thoughts, in your speech as well. And so the integration, though, when we say post integration is very important, it is the here and now awareness of what is being experienced, and the difference in between what you're experiencing inwardly, outwardly also, everything that is taking place in the present, in the now, and the difference in between what you know already consciously and through awareness, because you live through that experience in medicine, that could be a higher potential of yourself. And with this new awareness, now it's the responsibility. Integration is being able to say, let me grab this and let me be this here and now. And so then you start to speak, your speech starts to change. You start to speak in the way that you know that the direction wants to take you, that the way that the energy is flowing, that life is really taking flow. And so there's obviously a lot of integration practices at a physical level. There's integration at a mental level, at an emotional level, which has to do with the subconscious a lot. And there's a ton of different practices, from chanting, stimulating the vagus nerve, dancing. Of one of my best friends, Manuel, he does biodanza, and he does biodanza in the retreats. There's um, sacred medicine, continued microdosing of the medicine, so that you are opening up again that connection to that wisdom that was given to you in ayahuasca. With microdose, you're basically energetically connecting again to that, so that you can live it in the here and now. And so everything happens in the now. If you are able to begin feeling like you felt there in that ayahuasca amazing experience, and you start to bring that understanding, that mentality, that emotionality, those actions manifested in your speech in the here and now, then it integrates. That's the way that we integrate, through the embodiment of that. So you let all of that be felt, be understood. And then as you live it, your reality, what you're vibing out to the cosmos, and what the cosmos absorbs from you to give you more of that, it's in alignment with what you're transforming into. So, but I don't know if you have any other more specific questions. This is just a general overview of integration itself, but I don't know if you have any other more specific questions about what happens here, or how do we do that. It was a pretty general question.
I think a more specific question would probably be, once we've had these experiences, say our first experiences within a medicine ceremony, how do we leave and integrate those experiences in our life? Like, how do we move forward from what we've just discovered?
The only answer for this, the how won't matter. The kinds of things that you do really does not matter. What matters is that you are devoted and committed to change. Change is inevitable. God in itself is change. When you're committed to changing yourself, you're letting new energy flow. Old energy is stagnant energy. If you allow it to change,
Mhm.
you're putting yourself in coherence, in alignment with the divine, with life, Mother Earth. The wind is never the same. You're always getting fresh air, new, etc., etc. You get the point.
Mhm.
So the key characteristic of someone that it can integrate, of someone that integrates well, is devotion and commitment
Mm.
to healing, to change, to growth. This is why in initiation, in the shamanic initiation, the first thing that we said is like, you need to understand the purpose that you have, because otherwise you're not going to be able to commit. Your commitment is going to be wavering. You know, and once we have purpose, when once you see, and what is the purpose? The purpose is the glimpses of what Mother Ayahuasca shows you as your potential.
Mm.
That's your purpose.
Mm.
That's the state of consciousness that you want to become. So Mother Ayahuasca shows you that you can be all love and all acceptance and all of this, and then you get out of it as like your ego is like, no, bullshit. You were under, and that's when you have to catch yourself. It's like, I am devoted and committed to shut you up, and understand how is that, how can that be a possibility for you? And when you start to wonder and question this, how can this be a possibility for me? You open up to possibilities of healing the parts that doubt yourself, the healing the aspects of self worthlessness, of excessive anger, of whatever. It doesn't matter. But it is through devotion and commitment. That's the
Mhm.
key requirement. Yeah. Great question, Alicia. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh.
Uh,
Man, Andres, I just want to say, just thank you so much for sharing your vast level of information and knowledge and wisdom. It's definitely been an honor to have you with us. And as we grow, I think that we would love to have you back if you would have us. For everyone that's viewing this, please make sure to just like, subscribe, and if you do have any further questions that you would like to ask Andres, you can place them in the comments, or also, before we do wrap up, if anybody wants to get in contact with you for, let's say, ceremony, or just your wisdom and teachings, can you share that information for those who listening live and listen later?
Definitely. For our retreat, you can go to retreats at sacredpachamama.org. Retreat, I don't know if you can write down, Ray, is retreats at sacredpachamama.org. Um, that's a retreats with me personally in Mexico, pilgrimages, and also shamanic initiations. To reach me directly for any specific matter, more personal, you can do Andres at sacredpachamama.org. If you're looking for retreats in the States, I don't guide those. Those are with my brothers Manuel, Yvonne, and Laura. And you can take a look at those at sacredceremonies.org. It's a different venture for the States. It is not so much Andean cosmology. The spirituality of Manuel is different. The spirituality of Yvonne is different. The spirituality of Laura is different. And they all have their backgrounds in different pathways, right? Manuel's a little bit more New Age. Laura is Native American upbringing. Yvonne, it's amazing with 35 years. She's a yoga therapist, which is the highest level of yoga that you can aspire to as a teacher. They have their own ways. We agree of in the path, right? But Pachamama Sacred Path is specific with Andean cosmology, with this lineage, with everything that we've been speaking about. So those are some of the ways. Sacred ceremonies. Thank you so much. Sacredceremonies.org for ceremonies in the States, retreats, ceremonies, pilgrimages in Mexico and in Peru. It's at Pachamama Sacred Paths, which is sacredpachamama.org. and my credentials over there, retreats at Sacred Pachamama or Andres at sacredpachamama.org. Thank you.
All right. Yes, yes, yes. Um, Righteous, did you have any other questions before we wrap up?
You know, um, okay, I have a bit of a closing. What is one teaching you wish everyone on the planet could understand?
Mm, that nobody is what they think, and nobody is what they feel.
Mm,
That you are not your thoughts, and you are not your emotions.
hmm,
This could summarize awakening. Your thoughts, they're not meant to be attached to, and the same goes for emotions. You're feeling happy, attachment to the happiness, which creates like I am happy. I identify with happiness. I identify with sorrow. I identify with negatives also. None of that is me. None of that is the self.
hmm,
And the same goes for the thoughts. It could be amazing, beautiful thoughts for tomorrow and for the future. None of those are really me either. None of those are really yours either. They're not ours. They have their own way, their own wave. They come and they subside. Emotions come, they subside. There's something else.
hmm, hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Just once again, you are a fountain of wisdom, and thank you for pouring into all of us in terms of your understanding, your wisdom, and your love for the path. Like words can't express just how awesome it is to not only just know somebody like yourself, but just to have a moment to just allow for you to just get into your flow state in real time with us. So just thank you once again.
I
Very
hope.
powerful, very
Yes.
powerful, and
Thank you.
thank you for selflessly and maybe selfishly sharing with us your gifts and your wisdom.
It's in
Um,
my best interest.
yes, yes.
It's in my best interest.
It's Ayni though.
I hope.
It's definitely reciprocal. Yes,
Yes, indeed.
we are
Thank you.
thankful and grateful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Beautiful.
All right.
All right. So we got a couple of things that we're going to move forward with. Um, we have a song that we put out from our collective. And part of it is actually inspired by things that we've learned from you, Andres. Um, and so if you have time, if we haven't taken too much of your time, you're welcome to stay and listen to it with us. But we're going to share that, and then we're going to come back and do our weekly horoscopes. Is
Okay.
that Paqo? So
I mean, if you feel all right with it, that's cool. We can go ahead and get into the horoscopes.
we'll probably speed through the horoscopes,
Okay.
but we'll definitely share the song. So,
Okay. Most definitely.
all right.
All right. Well, once again, Andres, you are welcome to stick around if you like. Definitely, we'll go ahead and get into this song, and we'll be right back.
Spirit, not loud but undeniable, soft as breath, strong as truth. I feel the presence of my ancestors, not gone but guiding. They walk beside me in dream, in wind, in stillness. I am wrapped in their protection, loved by them unconditionally. They whisper what the world forgets. I am sacred, I am chosen, I am not alone. I know who I am in truth. are divine and set aside.
I call back my power and my energy now from all corners of the earth, from all people, places, and situations that have drained, siphoned, or stolen from me, consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or unintentionally. Across all realms, all times, all dimensions, I return whole, I return sovereign. We are free, we are free, we are free.
We are divine and set aside. Not in control, but in creation. Not in fear, but in trust. Not in doubt, but in deep knowing. I walk in harmony with the ancestors. I listen when spirit speaks. I move when I am shown. I rest when I am called. So it is, so it shall be. Ashe, amen, now namaste. This is the beginning of your remembering. You were never broken, only buried. We are not here to save you, we are here to remind you. You are the key, sacred ashram ministry. Let the illusions fall away, all that binds you to fear, to shame, to lies that were never yours. Spirit is speaking, the ancestors are singing. You are guided, you are protected, you are loved beyond measure. We are divine and set aside. You are free, you are free, you are free. You are free, you are free, you are free. You are free, you are free, you are free. You are free, you are free, you are free.
All right.
Right.
Let's go ahead and get that on out the way.
There we go.
Yes, yes.
All right.
So, for the sake of time, we are going to actually have the horoscopes on a separate video. You guys can look up for that tomorrow. That should be up sometime before the afternoon, just for the sake of the length of this podcast episode. Once again, we just want to say thank you to our guest, Andres. It is such an honor to have you with us. Hopefully, you enjoyed the song. And I'm pretty sure you can get a lot of the inspiration that we put into it from you. So you are definitely an inspiration for that. Oh, I can't
Did
hear
you
you.
mute him? Oh, you muted.
Yeah, I think you muted yourself.
I'm just saying that I love the music. It's, you guys got it. I know who I am in truth. All right. That's awesome. That's beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
That was definitely a nod to you, brother. So yeah.
Definitely not.
But yeah, just once again, it has been a wonderful build. Thank each and every one of you guys who took the time out to stay with us throughout this 2-hour journey. Brother Lamar, fellow Gemini family. Thank you for just taking the time out, and everybody who's looking at us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Andres channels as well. Just thank you all so much for the
So
support.
much.
With that being
Yes.
said, I am Paqo
Like,
Soul
share, and
Knowledge.
subscribe. Like,
Yep.
share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. And this was a wonderful build. Yes. Peace.